Happy Monday! We're back with another episode of Go FUD Yourself. JD Gagnon here, my good friend Kiara. How was your weekend?
It was hot. It's like the end of, gotta live every summer moment here in Northern Canada.
Yeah, it's pretty soon. Like next week, it'll be snowing, I think, right?
Probably, yeah. usually before the end of September, yeah.
Pretty standard.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so we got...
How are you? How was your weekend? Are you enjoying the end of summer? Does it matter that it's summer?
No, it was pretty much the same all year.
Right.
I did get a good sunburn, which is why I'm wearing a hat today, because it's like tomato red. So
yeah, I can see it through the...
Oh, that's the
giving us
light.
like a little window to your...
That's just the pink light shining on me. Okay, so there was a good amount of stuff that happened over the weekend. Nothing like...
Well, so some of it's from like late last week. I feel like I should clarify that. Some things were announced late last week, but then they didn't necessarily get reported on until the weekend because it was kind of a slow news weekend, which is actually good because usually busy news weekend means some kind of wacky SEC thing or a bunch of scams. And so I'll take that it was a little bit slow. But we can talk about crypto credit, what Visa and MasterCard are doing. This is interesting because last week we were talking about the accolades of Visa and MasterCard working with Binance and other crypto groups. And then there's a different credit company called BC Card in South Korea, and they're still moving into crypto. Western Union is moving into crypto. We've got a little bit else going on with Bitcoin mining and some other big names like Dropbox and Nvidia. And then there is a scam, and maybe we'll talk about Tornado Cash.
And I have one quick public service announcement before we get into it. A very good friend of mine who will remain unnamed has been in the space for a very, very long time, is an incredibly astute, developer, engineer, leader. They used LastPass for their private key like a decade ago, and their ledger just got emptied for tens of millions of dollars.
No way.
Yeah, wait. So, public service announcement. If you've ever used LastPass, and if you did what some people did back then, luckily I didn't do it for some reason, but a lot of people did because it was pretty common, and put your private key in there, it's a problemo. Make sure you revoke all those, any permission for that ledger, and move everything, or that wallet, and move everything to new wallets if you've ever used LastPass. So that's the public service announcement for today. Quick shout out to our friends at Tashi for the amazing hoodie.
You can't just move on from that. That's ding dong dang.
Yeah, we could, it really sucks. And again, it goes to show that, just because you've been here for a minute, we can't let the guard down. Self-custody is amazing, but you have a much greater responsibility and in some ways a little bit more risk. I
just did a quick Google of that because I'm that kind of person. And this has been happening since December of 2022.
Yeah, it's been going on for a minute. LastPass had a huge data breach. And then I think they're just systematically going through wallets, adding keys and draining wallets that have enough. I don't think they're going to drain small wallets because that brings unnecessary attention. But if there's enough of them, I think people will do anything to take money. So.
That's a bad way to start your Monday. All right.
It really sucks. Yeah. And he's just such a cool guy too. Like it really sucks to see this happen to anybody, of course, but especially people that have really been stewards of the space. Anyways, okay. So quick reminder, also, we're a live show Monday to Friday. Like, share, subscribe. If you can't tell, it's live because we say a bunch of dumb shit all the time, and it still makes it on the air. Also, comments. If you send comments, questions, concerns, hate mail, love mail, whatever you send, we love it, and we will definitely try to respond. And if you say something really offside, we'll probably read it on the air. So, you can give that a go too. I think
that's it. You ready?
I think that's all of the housekeeping items. So we can probably go ahead and get freaking going. All right, we're back. Okay, so we're going to start with What?
Visa and MasterCard don't believe in Binance.
Who would have thunk? Again, I mean, this is just a continuation, I think, of my confusion of what on earth Binance is doing.
What's their plan? What are they going to do?
I really don't get it. Like, I mean, Binance Pay is pretty effective and they have a lot of users. We talked about this last week. I think a total of 5 billion or something has been
stupid number of users.
Like it's incredible. So, I mean, Binance.
This isn't even just America. Like a lot of the news that you're reading about it says, oh, this is happening because of the SEC or the Department of Justice is going to charge them with some other type of fraud. But this is actually in Europe and LATAM. So Visa does not want to do co-branded cards in Europe anymore. And MasterCard has ended all partnerships in Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, and Bahrain, which is a big deal considering that Argentina is probably going to have that super pro Bitcoin dude and so on. But
well, I think this is kind of like, this is a really interesting anecdote to use, but it's kind of like shared due diligence with venture capital firms, I feel.
Absolutely.
So one venture capital firm thinks you're awesome, and everybody else says, well, if they thought it's awesome, then it must be awesome. And the opposite is also true. If you get shut down from the first 4 venture capital firms you talk to, word travels, and everybody else is
no
like,
one else is doing it.
I like this project, but XYZ said no. So what did they see that I'm not? Maybe we'll just abstain because there's a risk here that I can't identify. I feel like that's what a lot of these jurisdictions are starting to do, or even these large entities like Visa, MasterCard are just saying, hey, so there's problems in the US, there's problems in Europe, there's problems in Germany, there's problems in the UK for Binance, there's problems in LATAM for Binance with those local governments. If I was Visa and MasterCard, I would want to keep my hands out of that honeypot for now.
Also, imagine if you're that employee, from a marketing perspective, I always think about who the decision maker is, right? If that employee says, nah, let's keep going with Binance in Europe, and then that blows up in their face, that's a real short career for them, right?
I suspect that something of this magnitude is probably not some low level.
No, I know, but I just like the concept of how that
one made a decision.
Well, it's not just one person making the decision, but if a number of people want to be risk adverse, right, it will compound.
Yeah, I mean, the SEC has made some pretty bold and public allegations. And as we know,
no one like them.
Yeah, right. There's no regulator in the world that has deeper ties or deeper influence than the SEC and the US in terms of other countries and other businesses and so on. And so, this is one of the problems with the bureaucracy in some of these jurisdictions, and including the United States, that these lawsuits take forever, they're drawn out, they're full of appeals and all of this stuff. And it really dampens activity, growth, and expansion of a lot of protocols, of a lot of countries, of a lot of users, which, I mean, if you wanted to put the tin hat on, you could say maybe that's the point. But I think we're past that now. I think everybody's starting to realize, listen, we can't snuff out the crypto flame. So let's just figure out how to try to manipulate it. And I think that's what they're doing. So
we should talk about, I have these out of order. We should actually talk about Western Union next, because based exactly on what you're saying, is someone else is hedging bets that Visa and MasterCard are being risk adverse for no reason and decided to do the opposite thing. So they are saying that they're committed to financial innovation and they're exploring integrating Ripple and XRP into Western Union.
Can I add this to the FU Friday, please?
Absolutely.
So one of the reasons that crypto exists is because of assholes like Western Union, in my opinion. The amount of remittances, especially in African countries, Middle Eastern countries, LATAM countries, Southeast Asian countries, the amount of remittance that goes through Western Union is mind-blowing. The amount of fees that Western Union takes when they take 20, 25% off the top just to facilitate a number transfer on a computer. It's astronomical amounts of wealth that some of the poorest nations in the world are not even able to transfer to themselves. The people that live there. So this to me is like, I have zero patience for Western Union. I believe that they're a predatory institution, personally.
Well, yeah, that's their whole business.
We've been saying this with like groups like PayPal, Western Union, Swift,
yeah.
They're kind of looking at the lay of the land going, holy crap, our cash cow, our golden goose might be murdered here by a new technology. So let's try to get into it. I mean, I am going to be a staunch opposition of Western Union coming into crypto until they can prove that they're here to actually make the space better, as opposed to try to protect their exorbitant predatory profits. Not a fan of this at all. It's a big company. Yes, it'll get a lot of users on chain for the wrong reasons. I don't like it.
Yeah, this doesn't mean I love it. Okay, this other thing is also going to get a lot of users on chain that I think is a little bit more positive, unless you think too deeply about it in terms of power and control. But in South Korea, there's a company called BC Card. At some point, they were doing kind of like credit card amalgamation. So if you had a bunch of different cards, you could access it all through one place. They're kind of the POS for the credit card network in South Korea. They now also have their own credit card, and you can have peer-to-peer credit transactions on that card already. And what they're looking at doing is introducing NFT receipts for, yes, your regular transactions, but also for your peer-to-peer transactions. And I think this is kind of cool because the concept is that there's a lot of things going on specifically on Facebook Marketplace where people are getting scammed, or they want to buy something for their business and claim it, or what have you. And so they're looking to mitigate some of that risk with these NFT receipts. I don't know. It's kind of cool.
I think what I like about the NFT receipts is it proves that both parties intended to engage in the transaction. Yeah. So if somebody claims later, well, they just sent me random money, I'm not giving them anything. Someone just sent me money. There's no way to disprove that. I like this. I think this is great. We were talking about this, I think last week. It might have been Cher and I talking about it on Friday. I can't remember. But one of the other user experience challenges with the space right now is that, I mean, many of us that have been here for a minute understand how to read block explorers and Etherscan and MintScan and Avascan and all these other scans, but they're all slightly different. There's a lot of numbers and zeros, and there's a lot of stuff that, to the average person that hasn't spent the better part of a decade in the space is confusing. And so to see, this is a huge UX upgrade in payments, in my opinion. I think it'll also help from an accounting perspective, because the next challenge, if you don't have tons of transactions, most people try to do their accounting themselves for crypto, and it's a nightmare. And this will make it orders of magnitude less nightmarish. So I'm a big fan of this concept. I mean, South Korea, it's not going to have much of an impact on us, but they do have a budding crypto space there. So
pretty cool.
I'm a big fan of this. I'm a big
like
fan.
This one a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're going to hate this next one, which is we're coming back to America for this. The U.S. Treasury Department has proposed, they are not in place yet, but they have proposed that brokers must follow securities broker rules, including the reporting rules. Now, on the flip side of that, they have stated that individual validators and miners are exempt from the broker requirements. So it's not necessarily all bad, but it's definitely not great.
Yeah, this, I think, to me, was expected.
Absolutely. That doesn't mean I like it.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the process of acquiring a broker dealer at the moment. Literally, we're working through some stuff with FINRA. So, I mean, this to me is something that I at least expected. For all intents and purposes, if not all, a large chunk of crypto assets will be securities in the US, most likely. And if that's the case, then you have all the securities regulations that you have to abide by: broker dealers, money transmission. There's a lot, ATS or National Securities Exchange. You need to have clearing, custody. Like there's a lot of stuff that you have to consider from a regulatory perspective, which is the reason that we've been trying to motivate regulators to give us our own type of regulation, because it's insanely prohibitive for an emerging market. Like I've said this many times, but the cost for us to get all these licenses and to go through this process, we've already been working on it for a year, and we're probably another 6 to 9 months away from all the licenses being procured and all of the appropriate
just
people.
For one country, right?
Just for the US.
Yeah.
And total cost for all of that will be north of 10 million. So just to start to play in the regulated space, because you can't do shit until you have all of that stuff. We're talking $10+ million if you know what you're doing, which arguably we kind of do. If you don't know what you're doing, it's even more expensive and more time consuming, and it's a bloody nightmare. And again, as a startup, this is the reason that we haven't seen a ton of meaningful innovation in traditional finance in the last little while, because It's almost impossible. The barrier to entry is so high. Who raises $20 million pre-product, pre-launch? Like it's almost
also
impossible.
important to note, as you said, this is for one country, right? If you want to be an international payments provider, which in theory crypto should be, now you're looking at licenses in UAE and Nigeria and Hong Kong and so on and so forth. So if you're spending that amount per region, it's only going to be the large players who already exist.
I'm really hoping that over the next 4 or 5 years, once and this is maybe utopian, but it's actually potentially possible. The way that we have tax treaties amongst many countries, as long as one of the respective jurisdictions is monitoring and requiring accurate reporting, then you've always got a verifiable record in your country that they're at least doing what they're supposed to in said main country. So ideally, the US gets our head out of the sand. We create some regulations, and then we work on, from a policy and geopolitics perspective, work on treaties or different ways to say, hey, we've got all these fintech companies in the US now that are all compliant by SEC rules, CFTC rules, whatever jurisdictional rules. And those rules are probably more comprehensive than anywhere else. They will be by the end.
I mean, I guess that's why the EU has done MiCA a little bit, so that there is some sort of standard and you're not having to.
But I mean, this is like any other, it's an interesting kind of dilemma, right? Because what crypto has done for all of us as entrepreneurs is given us global access instantly. So like, not only are my clients the ones down the street from my brick and mortar store, but now they're my friends on the internet in my country. And now my friends on the internet globally, and maybe people from Mars one day, if you
and
want
people
to find them.
where we don't know where they exist too, right? That's kind of an interesting component.
People in different universes. But all the joking aside, I think I didn't
even mean like I wasn't trying to throw back to aliens. I was actually thinking that there is a level of anonymity. Sometimes we don't know who we're serving, right? So how do we know if we have all of the appropriate certifications or licenses if people want to remain anonymous in some way? If you have more thoughts on this, the public comment period is open until October 30th. So you can take a look into that.
And if this is something that you think is going to impact you, shameless plug for the Blockchain Association. They are leaps and bounds ahead of any other lobby group. We're members. They're amazing. It's not cheap to be a member, but the work they do is insanely impactful. They write aggregate briefs and requests and letters and everything on all of these bills throughout the entire process. We have working groups inside of the BA to give feedback on bills, to give concerns, questions, challenges. It's a really amazing organization. So if this is of interest to you, if you're a builder and you're listening to the show, please check out the BA. If you need a referral, I'm happy to make one. Anyways.
If you aren't interested in that because you are only mining Bitcoin, you'll be really sad to know that Dropbox doesn't want you to use them for this anymore. I think this is hilarious. Dropbox basically had unlimited storage for its advanced plan. It can't allow that. You can now only have 15 terabytes, which I mean, like, is still pretty large for a normal human adult. If you are already with them, you can have 35 terabytes and extra 5, like, you know, you can get up to 40, basically 40, 45, somewhere in there. But people were using Dropbox for mining, and so unlimited storage was slowing them down, and they're kind of upset about it.
Yeah. So first of all, you can get more than 15 terabytes on a commercial plan, but you have to be meaningfully engaged with Dropbox. So if you're a commercial organization and you need your entire company's stuff on Dropbox for some reason, you can get significant storage. I mean, this just makes sense to me. Anything unlimited, generally speaking, gets manipulated or gets taken advantage of. Dropbox has done some really incredible stuff. There's actually a Harvard Business School case study on how Dropbox did, I believe, you got a $10 credit if you were invited by someone. And the person that invited you got the credit too. Yep. And it was like this crazy viral thing. Now there's a lot of other groups that have, it was insane. There's a lot of other groups that have done something like this. Maybe not a good friend, a guy that I know from college actually started another storage company and sold it for $900 million. So, I mean, there was a lot of competition back then, and Dropbox has emerged. They have incredible marketing, incredible kind of guerrilla marketing, actually. Even still at this size, they do a lot of really
academically, they were considered the first growth hackers with that $10 referral.
Yeah. PayPal did something similar after, I think, too.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I like Dropbox. I'm not really mad that they did this, but if you are using them for any of your mining, pooling, or reselling, you'll wanna move that over. Maybe you can host it yourself using a Nvidia chip. This is interesting to me because Nvidia reportedly hates crypto, but keeps fueling us.
So I don't know if you listened to the All In podcast. If you don't, you should. I listen to it every week. I've listened to every episode, like 150 of them since they started. They were talking about Nvidia because Nvidia is growing like 200-300% year over year. Quarter over quarter is almost similar. And everybody's saying, hey, like it's going gangbusters, and these huge pension funds and hedge funds keep putting in piles of money. Where is the theoretical limit? Like what happens when this starts to be commoditized slightly? Like there's a lot of new companies working on their own silicon chips now. Apple, I believe Google's working on their own silicon, and others, Microsoft. So, I mean, Nvidia will have competition, and their margins, but their margins right now are insane. Like they're making so much money. It's unbelievable. And the backlogs are also unbelievable because right now it's an arms race for compute.
Yeah.
Globally, because everybody's trying to build AI large language models, which is hilarious. We just need a few amazing open source ones, which they're working on, and hopefully it stops this nonsense. But it sucks because we buy Nvidia chips for our data centers and our servers, and they've just become so expensive all of a sudden. And I mean, when you're running blockchain infrastructure like we are, bare metal, I mean, you can't skimp on performance because
there's not really another option.
No, like it totally sucks. But I mean, it's the way of the world right now. Thanks, AI. But I mean, to put this in perspective, there's a lot new AI companies that are building their own language models are raising billions in their early round, and $1 billion plus is used just on hardware and chips. $1 billion. That's obnoxious. Like to me, it's just insane that, again, we were talking about barriers to entry at the beginning of the pod today. I mean, that's a barrier to entry to AI for darn sure. Who can raise $1 billion like early on before you have a product? It's insane. You better have a really good idea. And I don't know, knee pads.
Okay, we have 5 minutes for bad news. Are you ready for all the bad news?
I don't like bad news, but yeah.
Okay. Balancer has been hacked. Nobody's surprised because they basically disclosed a vulnerability and then some people exploited it. It was about $900,000, just over $900,000. If you were on Balancer, I'm sorry that this happened to you. Bad news.
I unfortunately don't understand the vulnerability that well, but it seemed odd to me that they would disclose a vulnerability before patching the vulnerability. So I'm not 100% sure. Honestly, I haven't looked too deeply into this. It totally sucks. Balancer is a great team. They've been around forever. They're huge stewards of the space. I mean, again, I hate to see this happen to anybody, but when there's groups that have really strong, DevOps and OPSEC protocols, Balancer being one of them, they're very experienced. They have incredible engineers. This stuff sucks because again, I don't like it when it happens to people that have no business building protocols, but at least you understand it. Like this is their first protocol. They're not real engineers. They made some mistakes. Fine. But these larger protocols, Balancer being one of them, it really sucks. Like it's, anyways, luckily it was only $900,000. Easy for me to say. I didn't lose any money, but it still sucks.
Did you talk about Tornado Cash last week with Cher?
We did a little bit.
Yeah.
It's interesting because he and I have very different viewpoints on privacy and anonymity. And
exactly. That's why I thought it'd be interesting.
he and I actually are a pretty good cross section of the space because this is one of those things. It's kind of like Democrats and Republicans. There's very few people that sit in the middle and say, I'm okay with either one as long as they move towards the center. Generally, it's like I'm either in this camp or I'm in this camp. And if you're in one of the camps, you don't like the other camp, generally speaking. It's kind of like that in crypto regarding anonymity and privacy.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, when I came to this space, I came because I was all about anonymity and privacy. I thought, this is amazing. Not only can we do finance, but now the government's going to stay the hell out of our business. Come on. Like, I mean, as this has been expanding and so on, I don't see that being a viable future in any modernized jurisdiction. So what I don't love about this is the original engineers are being charged with money laundering. And I think, I think there's some deference that should be paid to what their intentions were given the time that they launched and burned the keys for this damn thing. Because I don't think anybody has.
This is the current debate, right? Is it the developers who are accountable, or is it the bad actor users who are accountable? And one of the relations or one of the cases that they're trying to use is about Napster, right? Napster was a great concept that happened to have a lot of malicious users.
And they're making a comeback.
They are.
So I in November last year, I was at a talk with the original founder of Napster, who has now come back to Napster and is launching again with a huge Web3 angle, which
Wild,
is
hey?
really freaking cool.
Love it.
Yeah, really cool. But anyways, LimeWire, remember LimeWire back in the day?
Yeah, LimeWire also relaunched here in Web3.
Yeah, there's lots of crazy stuff going on. But anyways, this one is just a strange one. I mean, Cher and I are on opposite sides. He thinks there's a future where we can build privacy enabling structures with cryptography. And I think it's possible to build it. I think there's some really good attempts that are happening right now. I'm just not sure if it's going to be allowed. Mm-hmm. And as long as the government has influence via regulation, A, and via on and off ramps, B, they can tell you what you can and can't do. So there we are.
You know who else is being told what to do is SBF. We're going to wrap up here, but just to wreck everybody's day, FTX is spending about $1.5 million a day on legal bills. Now you know.
50 million a month. I don't know where they're getting this money from. Unless this is FTX proper and it's being spent by the trustees to deal with this.
That's the idea, is that it's FTX, not SBF.
Not SBF, yeah. Because if it's SBF, like, you need a lot of lawyers to amass 1.5 million a day.
The first 7 months of the case had over 200 million in legal fees.
Same thing with Michael Arrington is a friend, and they did the Fahrenheit purchase of Celsius.
Right.
And he was saying that the amount of legal fees that were being quoted in the transition by some of the other bidders was multiple hundreds of millions of dollars. It just seemed like a big fat cash grab for a bunch of attorneys. And I think in the end, that's actually why Fahrenheit won, because they weren't trying to just skim fat off the top. They were really trying to build a business that hopefully can replenish assets of many people that lost money. So we'll see.
Well, that's your Monday news. All your Monday FUD wrapped up in a half hour.
All of it in half an hour. We did a good job. Again, quick reminder, live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We're on all the different venues. Like, share, subscribe, helps get the word out. With that, today I say to you, Kiara, go FUD yourself.
Go FUD yourself.